Right, let's talk about a doll. Not just any doll, mind you, this is Annabelle. But before all the spooky business, she was, well, just a doll. A Raggedy Ann doll, to be precise, you know the type. Yarn hair, button eyes, probably a bit floppy. She was a gift, apparently, given to a nursing student named Donna back in 1970. A birthday present from her mum. Sweet, right? Or so you'd think. At this point, there were no whispers of demons, no late-night levitations, just a doll sitting in a flat. Donna lived with her flatmate Angie, and Annabelle, of course. They were busy students, studying, working, probably complaining about exams, the usual stuff. The doll would just sit there, on Donna's bed most likely, watching them. Okay, maybe not watching, not yet anyway, it was just part of the furniture. A colorful, slightly old-fashioned addition to a young woman's room. Nothing to see here, folks, or was there? Because things, as they often do in these stories, were about to get a bit strange, a bit off. So Donna and Angie started noticing things, little things at first, you know how it goes. The kind of stuff you might dismiss. Annabelle, their friendly Raggedy Ann doll, wasn't always where they left her. Donna would place her on the bed, arms at her sides, legs straight, then she'd come back later, and Annabelle would be in a different position. Maybe her legs were crossed, or one arm was raised, almost like she was waving. Creepy, right? But still, maybe explainable. Or maybe not. Then it wasn't just changing positions. The doll started moving rooms, all by itself. They'd leave her in the living room, then they'd find her back in Donna's bedroom, sometimes with the door closed. Now that's a bit harder to explain away, isn't it? Unless they had a very mischievous, very quiet intruder who only bothered to move dolls, which seems unlikely. This wasn't just a slight nudge anymore, this was full-on relocation. The unease started to settle in, that quiet little flat wasn't feeling so quiet anymore, and then came the notes. Little pieces of parchment paper, with messages written on them, messages like, "Help us" or "Help Lou." Lou was a friend of theirs, by the way, we'll get to him. The handwriting was like a child's, scrawled, a bit shaky. But here's the kicker. Donna didn't even own parchment paper, so where were these notes coming from? And who was writing them? The doll? That seemed impossible. But what other explanation was there? This mystery was deepening, fast. At this point, Donna and Angie were probably a bit freaked out. I mean, wouldn't you be? Your doll is moving, it's leaving cryptic notes. On paper you don't even own. This is beyond a prank. This is something else, something unsettling. They were young, they were probably scared, they needed answers. And so they decided to seek some help. To try and understand what on earth was happening with their once innocent Raggedy Ann doll. The one that was rapidly becoming less of a toy and more of a tenant. So, Donna and Angie did what many people might do when faced with the unexplainable. They called in a medium, a spiritual expert, if you will. The medium held a seance. Picture it. Darkened room, hushed voices, probably a few nervous glances. And the medium came back with a story. A sad story, really. She said that long before their flat complex was built, a little girl had lived on the property. Her name was Annabelle Higgins, and she had died there, tragically, at the age of 7. According to the medium, this little girl, Annabelle Higgins, was lonely. She saw Donna and Angie, she saw the doll, and she liked it. She felt a connection to it, she wanted to stay, to be with them, to play. The spirit of Annabelle Higgins, the medium explained, was the one moving the doll, leaving the notes. She wasn't trying to be malicious, she was just a lost, lonely child. Or so the story went. It must have been quite a thing to hear. Your flat is haunted by a 7-year-old ghost. Now here's a crucial part. Donna, being a compassionate nursing student, felt sorry for this supposed spirit. A little girl, all alone, it tugged at her heartstrings. So when the spirit of Annabelle Higgins, allegedly speaking through the medium or maybe directly to their hearts, who knows, asked for permission to inhabit the doll, Donna said yes, she gave permission. Think about that. Sure, little ghost girl, you can live in my Raggedy Ann doll. It sounds innocent enough, right? A kind gesture. But was it wise? Probably not. Because after that permission was granted, things didn't get better. They got worse. Lou, their friend, had always been skeptical. He didn't like the doll. He felt something was off about it. Evil, even. He warned Donna to get rid of it. But Donna, perhaps still believing the lonely little girl story, kept Annabelle. Lou's unease, however, only grew. He started having bad dreams, nightmares, specifically, featuring Annabelle. The doll wasn't just moving anymore, it was starting to feel threatening, especially to Lou. Lou's bad dreams about Annabelle became more intense. He wasn't just seeing her in his sleep, He was experiencing sleep paralysis. You know that awful feeling where you're awake but you can't move. And in these terrifying moments, he claimed Annabelle was there, in his room, staring at him. Sometimes, he said, she would glide up his leg, and then onto his chest. He felt like he was being choked. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't scream. Imagine that terror. A doll, seemingly alive, attacking you in your most vulnerable state. But it didn't stop at nightmares and sleep paralysis, oh no. One day, Lou and Angie were planning a road trip. They were looking at maps in the flat. Suddenly, they heard noises from Donna's room, rustling sounds, like someone was in there. Lou went to investigate. He slowly opened the door. The room was empty, except for Annabelle. She was sitting on the floor, in a corner. He approached her cautiously. And then, he says, he felt a sudden pain on his chest, like someone had clawed him. He looked down, and there they were. 7 distinct claw marks, 3 vertical, 4 horizontal. They were hot, like burns, and they were bleeding. But here's the really strange part. There was no one else in the room. Just Lou, and the doll. The marks, Lou claimed, healed unnaturally fast, almost completely gone within 2 days. This wasn't a playful spirit anymore. This wasn't a lonely little girl. This was something aggressive, something harmful, something inhuman. The game had changed. Drastically. Donna, Angie, and Lou were now thoroughly terrified. Rightfully so. This had gone way beyond a few moved objects and cryptic notes. This was physical assault, unexplained injuries. The Annabelle Higgins story suddenly felt like a dangerous deception. They realized they were dealing with something far darker than they had initially believed. They needed help, not just from a local medium. They needed someone who understood the truly sinister side of the paranormal. It was time to call in the experts. The big guns. Section 5. Enter the Warrens, containing the uncontainable. Faced with escalating terror, Donna finally decided enough was enough. She contacted an Episcopal priest, Father Hegan. He listened to their story. He saw their fear, and he in turn contacted a higher authority in the church, Father Cook. Father Cook then made a call that would change Annabelle's story forever. He called Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, paranormal investigators. Demonologists, to be exact. This was their kind of case. Exactly their kind of case. Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived at the flat. They interviewed Donna, Angie, and Lou. They examined the doll. And they came to a very different conclusion than the first medium. This wasn't the spirit of a little girl named Annabelle Higgins. According to the Warrens, there was no Annabelle Higgins. Instead, they believed an inhuman demonic spirit was manipulating the doll. It hadn't possessed the doll, they clarified. Demons don't possess objects, they possess people. The doll was merely a conduit, a tool. The Warrens explained that this demonic entity was essentially trying to trick Donna and Angie. The lonely little girl act? All a ruse. The goal, they claimed, was to gain permission to enter their lives. And once permission was granted, which Donna had unwittingly done, the spirit would then try to possess one of them. The claw marks on Lou? A sign of its true, malevolent nature. The Warrens decided the doll needed to be removed, immediately, for the safety of everyone involved. A cleansing ritual was performed on the flat, then came the journey of taking Annabelle away. Ed Warren apparently drove, with Annabelle sitting in the back seat. He claimed the doll tried to interfere with the car. The brakes failed, the steering went haywire. He had to sprinkle the doll with holy water to calm things down. Eventually they got her back to their home in Connecticut, and there she was placed in their occult museum, encased in a specially built glass box, with warnings and regular blessings, contained, but as many believe, still very much active. Section 6. The What If Nightmare, Annabelle on the Loose. Okay, so Annabelle is locked away, safe and sound, right? In her glass case in the Warrens Occult Museum. But let's just play a game of what if. What if she wasn't? What if one day the news broke? Annabelle is missing, vanished, poof, gone. Can you imagine the headlines, the sheer unadulterated panic that might cause for some people? The museum is supposed to be secure, fortified with prayers and protections. So how could she possibly escape? That's the first question everyone would ask. Would it be a simple theft, some misguided thrill seeker, or a dark arts enthusiast wanting a very dangerous souvenir? That's one possibility. A very human, very plausible explanation. But this is Annabelle we're talking about. So, of course, people would immediately jump to more supernatural conclusions. Did she dematerialize? Did some unseen force just pluck her from her prison? The speculation would be wild. The internet would probably break, again. Every creak in every house would suddenly be Annabelle. Think about the implications for the Warrens' legacy. Their entire reputation is built on containing these malevolent forces. If Annabelle, arguably their most famous artifact, just ups and leaves, that's a massive blow. It would raise so many questions. Was the containment ever truly effective? Was the danger underestimated, or more chillingly, has the entity simply grown too powerful for its confines? The very foundation of their work would be shaken, and the fear would be palpable. Where would she go? What would she do? The immediate aftermath would be a frenzy of searching. But how do you search for a supernaturally charged doll that might not want to be found? Do you put out an Amber Alert for a Raggedy Ann? Probably not. But the paranormal community would mobilize. Ghost hunters, mediums, demonologists, everyone would have a theory. Everyone would be on high alert. The thought of that doll, with its alleged demonic attachment, being out there somewhere untethered, it's the stuff of nightmares, literally, and it would be a global headline. Section 7. Paranormal Pandemonium. The community reacts. If Annabelle actually went missing from the Warrens Museum, the paranormal community would explode. It would be like the Super Bowl, the World Cup, and a royal wedding all rolled into one, but for ghost enthusiasts. Imagine the forums, the subreddits, the late-night YouTube streams. Every investigator, every psychic, every armchair demonologist would have a take. Theories would fly faster than a supposedly possessed doll could move across a room. It would be absolute chaos, but a very specific niche kind of chaos. Some would immediately declare it a sign of the apocalypse, or at least a very bad omen. Proof that the forces of darkness are gaining strength. Others might try to track her, using dowsing rods, EMF meters, Ouija boards, you name it. Expeditions would be launched. Find Annabelle would become a rallying cry. There'd be alleged sightings, of course. I saw a Raggedy Ann doll by the bins, and it looked at me funny. The line between genuine concern and sensationalism would blur completely. It would be a wild ride. Skeptics naturally would have a field day. They'd probably suggest it was a publicity stunt, or that the doll was simply misplaced by a clumsy curator. Lost property, not lost soul, they'd quip. But even their mockery might be tinged with a tiny bit of, but what if? Annabelle has that effect. She's so ingrained in pop culture horror that even those who don't believe might feel a slight shiver. The debate would rage. Believers versus skeptics, with Annabelle or her absence at the very center of the storm. And what about the other artifacts in the Warrens Museum? If Annabelle can get out, what's stopping the others? That thought alone would send ripples of unease through those who believe in such things. Is the museum compromised? Are other dark entities now stirring? The disappearance of one doll could trigger a much wider panic within paranormal circles. It wouldn't just be about Annabelle anymore. It would be about the perceived integrity of all such containment efforts. A genuine crisis of faith for some. Section 8. Beyond the glass case, public fear or fleeting fascination. So, the paranormal world is in meltdown. But what about the general public? Your average Joe and Jane, would they genuinely panic if Annabelle went missing? Or would it just be another weird news story? Something to chat about over coffee before moving on to the football scores or the weather? It's a tough one. Annabelle is famous, no doubt. Thanks to the films, mostly. But do people really believe she's a genuine demonic threat when she's not on a cinema screen? The media would certainly have a field day. Non-stop coverage, missing doll terror headlines. Every news channel would be running spooky B-roll footage. Social media would be a whirlwind of memes, theories, and terrified emojis. #Annabelle missing would trend worldwide. For a week or two, she'd be the most talked about fugitive on the planet. More infamous than any bank robber or escaped convict. Because, well, she's not exactly going to turn up at the local police station asking for directions, is she? There'd likely be a divide. Some people would be genuinely scared, locking their doors, checking under their beds, maybe even buying a crucifix or two, especially those who are already a bit superstitious or have a strong belief in the supernatural. For them, a missing Annabelle isn't just a story, it's a potential threat roaming free. They'd be avoiding antique shops and anywhere selling Raggedy Ann dolls for a good long while. You can bet on that. The fear, for this group, would be very real. But for many others, it might be more like dark entertainment. A thrilling, real-life horror story unfolding. Something to follow with a mix of fear and fascination. Like watching a scary film, but with the unsettling possibility that it's actually happening. Local authorities? They'd probably issue a statement saying they're aware of the reports but would likely treat it as a theft from a private museum unless actual, tangible harm started occurring. It's a strange situation. A missing doll causing potential international unease. Only Annabelle. Section 9, The Unshakable Shadow, Annabelle's Enduring Legacy. Let's say Annabelle did go missing, and then, somehow, she was found, stuffed in a bin, or in the hands of some daft collector. Would things go back to normal? Not entirely. That missing scare would just add another layer to her already terrifying legend. It would prove to some that she escaped. That the containment isn't foolproof, the story would be retold for generations. Remember that time Annabelle got out? It would make her even more infamous, even more feared. Annabelle has become more than just a doll, more than just a case file from the Warrens' collection. She's a symbol of contained evil, a tangible representation of the things we don't understand, the things that scare us in the dark. Her glass case isn't just protecting us from her, it's a visual metaphor for our attempts to control the unknown. If that control is shown to be fragile, it's deeply unsettling. Even if you're a hardened skeptic, there's a primal part of us that responds to that kind of story. The power of belief is a funny thing, isn't it? And the power of storytelling. Annabelle's tale has all the classic horror ingredients. An innocent object corrupted, unexplained phenomena, demonic forces, dedicated investigators. It's a narrative that resonates. Whether you believe every word or none of it, the story itself has power. It taps into our collective anxieties about good versus evil, the seen versus the unseen. And a missing Annabelle would amplify that 1,000 times over. It's a story that just keeps on giving. So, whether she's safely behind glass or hypothetically on the loose, Annabelle's legacy is secure. She will continue to haunt our thoughts, to inspire films, to fuel nightmares. She represents that chilling idea that sometimes, the most ordinary things can harbor the most extraordinary darkness. And that perhaps is the most frightening part of her entire story. The thought that evil doesn't always come with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it comes with button eyes and a painted smile, sweet dreams or don't.